Okay, so today we're going to talk about the basics of buying a home and really get into the details of what it takes to get yourself started. Okay, so I think the first step, if you agree with me, is to get hooked up with a lender like yourself. Just so you can see where your finances are. Do you think that's a good step to start with?
I think so. I think at least have it be upfront. If it's not the very first step, like if you've met a realtor, at least have it be meet with the lender before you go looking for homes.
Yeah. Okay. Because I always have clients that are interested and they found a house that they're interested in, but then they don't know where to start from there, and I can't really put them in a price range until I know how much they're approved for.
I think it's good for a few reasons too, because that way they're not getting their heart set on something that's outside of their price range. But also, if they do find that home that they love, it's probably going to be gone by tomorrow in this market. So if they get everything settled with the lender and they get a pre-approval letter, they can write an offer that minute when they go look at the house with you.
Yeah.
So
if I had a client that's ready, wants to buy a house, what's the first thing that you're going to need from them?
Usually it's nice to kind of just have an overview conversation of what their goals are, what they're looking at, what their comfort level is for, if they're payment sensitive, or if they only have a certain amount to put down, or if their credit maybe needs a little work. Kind of just having that initial conversation to see, what's going to be the best fit for them.
Okay. So I know a lot of people are really worried that their credit's, not going to be good enough, and they get really nervous about it. What's something that I should probably be telling them that they're going to need to keep an eye out?
I think sometimes it's really interesting because, we have all of these tools that people can go to monitor their credit, and more times than not, they're not very accurate. So I think
like Credit Karma, you're talking about stuff like that?
Yeah, I wasn't going to call anything out, but
I did.
So I think, sometimes your credit might be better than what you think it is. Sometimes it might be worse because there's some old collection on there looming that's pulling your credit down. So I think actually doing a pull on your credit, and then that way, we can find what program you could use today at your credit score, or I could tell you the exact steps to take to raise your credit score up, because oftentimes you think, I'll pay this off and it'll raise up my score, and that's not always the case.
So the higher the credit score, the better, right?
For the most part, it's not impossible if you have a lower credit score, but the higher the credit score, the better you're going to be overall for your interest rate, for your homeowner's insurance, for your mortgage insurance, if you're going to need mortgage insurance, all of those things. So it's definitely a good idea to have it be as high as possible, but it doesn't mean you can't buy a home if you don't have a 700 credit score.
So is there like a magic number that you're supposed to have in order to be able to at least be approved?
Well, so right now, I've been getting a lot of clients that are interested in using like the down payment assistance or grant programs, and with those, you do need a 640 to use some of those, and a lot of them are 680. So kind of if you can get to that 640, that's going to open some doors. If you can get up to 680, that's going to open more doors for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know mine's not even close to that.
But you're working on it, and that's okay.
Okay,
it's fine.
So I know that it's really important, this thing called debt to income ratio. So isn't that what you guys go off of to get the loan approved?
That's one of the things. So and that's the whole thing. So you asked what the first step was, having that conversation, and then really if you want to move forward, it's going through and doing the application, because it's not only your credit score. Your approval is going to be based on your whole picture. So your debt to income, which is how much are you paying out each month, not for utilities and stuff that's on your credit report, like a car payment, credit card, student loans, all of those things. That number compared to what your income is, what your gross income is. And so that number, that gives us a ratio. And so that's your debt to income ratio. And that number also isn't fully defined of what, we want that to be under, depends on the loan program, and it depends on what assets you have. It depends on all of those things, but we want to keep that definitely under 50. But the automated underwriting system is going to kind of, like I said, look at that whole picture And some people, it only lets them go up to, say, a 45% debt to income ratio. And some people, it's more like a 42. It's just, everything is different because it's looking at everything about you. It's looking at your credit score. It's looking at your debt to income. It's looking at your assets and all those things. So that's why it's really important to do the full application, because then we can really talk real numbers, basic versus just some general numbers of what I think you might be approved for, to give you a rough idea.
So, this kind of still sounds like if I was just somebody that never heard of this before and was not really understanding what's going on, I feel like I would be thinking, oh my God, I pay all these things. Like, I have my car payment, I have all these other utilities and things that I pay. How am I going to change that? So if I have if I feel like I have a whole bunch of things that I pay monthly and nervous about that, how would you suggest to
and that's part of that conversation. It's that comfort payment, that comfort level. So if you're paying rent right now and you're paying, say, $1,600 in rent, and that's your comfort level, then that's kind of the monthly payment we're going to look at for a home purchase. Or if it's possible and you have, a $700 or $800 car payment, maybe you have enough saved up, and maybe, the balance on that, maybe it makes sense to pay that off so you have more room to pay towards your mortgage. So every picture is kind of different, and I think it's good to get the borrower comfortable, talking to you about what kind of home they're looking at, but also talking to me about their finances and their worries and stuff, so we can look at all those things and I can kind of play around like a puzzle and fit them into a good situation that they're going to be comfortable with.
Okay. So let's just say that we have good enough credit and that we have been approved. Okay. So what about the money that you need to put down on a house? Like, how much money do I need to have? And does it matter on what kind of loan that you're going to get?
I think I'm going to say we do have a lot of programs where you don't need to put much down. Those programs mostly come with a higher interest rate, which is going to make that monthly payment higher. So oftentimes, people want to use those programs, and sometimes they're not the best fit because they're very sensitive to their monthly payment. And all of those things add up: the higher interest rate, the mortgage insurance that's going to be added on, the taxes, insurance, all those things are going to add up to put them a little higher. So I'm going to say the more you have saved up, the better. It's not an end all be all. So conventional minimum for first time home buyer, you would need 3% down plus your closing costs. FHA minimum 3.5% down saved up, off of your purchase price. But there are, you can get a little bit of assistance if needed, but the more you put down, the less you're going to pay in mortgage insurance. So that's all based on a sliding scale. So if you can get, say, 10% down, your mortgage insurance on a conventional loan is going to be less per month.
Okay, so I know these numbers kind of sound like quite a bit, because 3%. But if you really think about it, if you're buying a house for $300,000 and you need 3%, it's a good chunk of change that you need. So, what if I have a client that needs to borrow some money from like their mom or somebody else? Is that going to have any kind of effect on getting the loan? Or
no, gifts are totally fine and they are a great option. And sometimes people don't think of that as an option, but if you can get a gift to help and have your down payment be bigger because of that, that's amazing, and that's super easy and super common.
So I have a client that has been having a difficult time lately because of the pandemic, they've been working from home, and their income hasn't been totally consistent. They've had just a rough time with that lately. So how is that going to affect, what would your suggestion be? Would they have to wait until they have a consistent income because of this issue?
Possibly. So it really, and I'm not going to bore you guys with it, we've been seeing that a lot. It's very common right now. And, sometimes it has no effect. If somebody's a salaried employee, it doesn't matter if they were out of work for a little bit. We know they're back to work and they're making that salary. If they're hourly, it's a little different. Also, sometimes, if the person's married or they have somebody else on loan with them, we can completely not use their income at all and it doesn't matter. So there are ways around it. I think I've had 1 or 2 borrowers recently that need to wait a little bit longer because they were out for too long. You know, they were out of work, they were at one job and they waited and they've been out of work too long, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but that's okay. They know they have to wait another 4 months and we can go from there. So it just at least gives you a plan, but it might not be an issue at all.
Okay. One other thing that I know is a major question that I get all the time. They're worried about their credit, and how do they get started? What are the things that they need to give you in order to get the loan started? I know you need to get some documentation, so what is that you
Yeah, well, once we do that application and I pull your credit and we have those conversations, and you want the pre-approval letter, minimally, excuse me, I need your pay stubs to see if what you think your gross income is that really what it is? So minimally upfront, I need your pay stubs, and then once we get into the process, I'll need some bank statements, driver's license. That's, it's not
stuff.
It depends. If you're self-employed, I'll need your tax returns. If not, just 2 years W-2s.
So what if I have a bunch of other properties? Like I have other properties that I actually don't have any mortgages on. What is that?
Right.
Does that make any difference?
It does. So, and that's why everybody's going to need to send me something different. If you're simple, straightforward W-2 employee, it's pretty easy. If you're somebody like you who owns all these random properties, you're going to need to give me your tax information on those properties, your homeowner, if you have homeowner's insurance on those kinds of things. And we need to just show that there's no mortgage on it. So we'll still count your payments against you for taxes and insurance, but it's pretty minimum at that point.
All right. Well, so now it seems like after that process, you're pretty much ready to go shopping for a house. So I know you mentioned earlier that it's really important to let everybody know that me as a realtor and you as a lender, we communicate quite a bit. And if you're not communicating, it's very difficult to get a deal to go through. And I've had situations where I've had to deal with that, and it's so frustrating. But it's really important to communicate.
Yeah,
right?
I kind of think of it as, it's like a triangle of the clients, whoever they are, if they're husband and wife or a single person, doesn't matter, and then us two, and we're all, I'm not going to share personal information with you as the realtor, but I'm going to let you know what they're approved for, and also if they're kind of on the border of that. So if you're looking at a specific property where maybe there's a big HOA, let me know the address and we'll plug those numbers in and make sure it works for that borrower.
I know that's a huge thing right now, because putting in any offer right now, it's going to end up being in a multiple offer situation, and you want to be as prepared as you can.
Yeah.
So if I'm putting in an offer because the client got super excited and really wants it and it's in their price range, but if the HOA on it is going to totally throw off their payment, it's really important to have that communication with the lender. So make sure that your agent, like me, is communicating really well. So let's talk about multiple offer situations.
Okay.
So I know that it's really important that you need to be pre-approved first in order to have that upper hand in putting in an offer, but do you have any insight on the lending side of putting in an offer, or
what I've seen kind of lately, speaking to that, is, and you can speak to this on the realtor side, somebody putting in an offer above what the house is maybe worth to try to get their offer to stand out or accepted. And so what's going to happen if that property requires an appraisal, which sometimes lately they're not, depending on the situation. So say you put an offer in at $400,000 and the house comes back and appraises at $360,000 or something. At that point, if you've written into your offer that you will pay above and beyond whatever the appraisal comes back at, that's on the borrower to come up with that extra money, because we're not going to lend more than what the house is worth. So if you're putting 10% down on this house, we're not going to lend you above 90% of that home's value.
Yeah, it's really, really important to make sure you're not getting so excited, because it is, a stressful situation, if you really fall in love with the house and you want to put an offer in, and then you see that there's 7 other offers on the property, you want to do whatever you can to get the property, but is it really going to be worth paying an extra $15,000 out of your pocket or whatever it is?
Right, because typically it used to be that at that point, if the appraisal came in low, you'd renegotiate, and usually the seller would come down. And now in this market, it seems like it's maybe that's not always the answer.
No.
And then down the road, what I've been seeing too is somebody coming back and trying to refinance, and their value is still, they put in that high offer, 3 years ago when it was kind of a similar market, and they put in way too high of an offer. So now they're trying to refinance, and they don't have the value in the home.
I have
to
a ton of
do the
people that
refinance.
actually bring that up and say that, well, I'll just put this much and then I'll go and refinance, and it's not always the best idea. So you really gotta just kind of take a step back and make sure that it's really gonna work for you, and make sure that you're comfortable with going up that high. And I had a deal recently where somebody wanted to put in an extra $40,000. This was a house that was like $350,000, and all the comps were around $350,000, $360,000, and they wanted to put an extra $40,000. I counseled them, and they still wanted to do it, so we put in the offer, and they still got beat out with somebody. I think it was over $400,000. So it was like, so maybe that was just like a godsend in telling them this one's not meant for you.
And I like what you said there, because I think people in this market, or in this, not even just in this market, when people are buying a home, they get so excited and they get that tunnel vision of they have to have this house, and they, they're like, whatever, we'll put an offer in for whatever. And it's nice that you do that counseling to them to kind of bring them back to reality, because at what point would you go to a store and look at a pair of shoes and say, oh, I'm going to pay $50 more than those shoes are worth? You wouldn't. And this is such a big purchase, but I think people get so caught up in it that it's nice to have a reasonable realtor or lender or whatever, explaining things to them and saying, is this really what you want to do? Because while you can't tell them what to do as a realtor, I think it's good that you use your experience and knowledge to kind of advise them and let them know what this could mean down the road for them.
So I really do want to say that it really is very important to have really good communication between the lender and the agent and the client, because we want to be on the same page throughout the entire transaction. And I feel like that's pretty much it. So unless you have anything else to throw in there, I think
we've covered it.
All right.
And that's just the tip.
Okay.